There's a certain kind of person you've probably met before. Maybe they greeted you with an almost overwhelming smile. Maybe they hugged you 5 minutes after meeting you. Maybe they seemed so warm, so welcoming, so effortlessly charming that you couldn't help but feel pulled in. But then, somewhere along the way, something started to feel off. You began to question their motives. You started wondering if all that warmth was genuine, or something else entirely. Maybe you even felt guilty for thinking that. After all, isn't being friendly a good thing? Let's talk about it. Because there is a problem with over-friendly people. Not all of them, of course. But the pattern, the overly enthusiastic compliments, the personal questions way too early, the relentless positivity, can sometimes be more about manipulation than sincerity. And whether it's in the workplace, in dating, or in everyday social life, over-friendliness can sometimes be the mask that hides control, insecurity, or even something darker. The illusion of instant intimacy. At the core of this issue is a phenomenon psychologists call instant intimacy. This is when someone tries to skip the natural process of getting to know you and instead fast-tracks the connection. They might call you the best friend after a single conversation. They might tell you deeply personal stories to make you feel special, important, or trusted. They might mirror your values, your interests, your language. But here's the trick: instant intimacy often isn't about you. It's about them. Over-friendly people often use this tactic to create a bond that feels real, but isn't rooted in time, trust, or genuine compatibility. Instead, it's based on performance. A kind of emotional speedrun designed to make you drop your guard. And it works, at least at first. Humans are wired to respond to friendliness. Our brains light up when someone smiles at us. We instinctively want to connect. So when someone showers us with kindness, our first reaction is usually gratitude, not suspicion. But the problem is, not all kindness comes without strings. When niceness becomes a strategy, it's important to understand that being friendly isn't the same as being good. Just because someone seems warm, helpful, or complimentary doesn't mean they're trustworthy. In fact, excessive friendliness is often used as a strategy, consciously or unconsciously, to gain favor, access, or control. This happens in all sorts of environments. In the workplace, the overly nice colleague might flatter the boss, charm coworkers, and build alliances, not because they're generous, but because they're playing the long game. In dating, the overly attentive person might say all the right things, seem too good to be true, and love bomb their way into your life, before suddenly withdrawing, manipulating, or controlling you. And in friendships, the over-friendly person might always be around, always supportive, always sweet, until you set a boundary. Then, the mood shifts. That's often the moment the mask slips. Because over-friendliness isn't always about connection. Sometimes it's about control, and control doesn't respond well to resistance. The red flags of over-friendliness. So how can you tell the difference between someone who's genuinely kind and someone who's using friendliness as a tactic? Here are a few signs that can signal when something isn't quite right. 1. Too much, too soon. They compliment you constantly, overshare, or declare a deep bond before you've had time to build one. It feels rushed, performative, almost scripted. 2. They avoid depth. Despite their enthusiasm, conversations often stay shallow. Or when they do get personal, it's always about them. It's hard to get a word in. Or it feels like they're not really listening. 3. They guilt you into things. They use their kindness as leverage. After everything I've done for you, becomes a common phrase. There's an emotional debt being created, and you're expected to pay it back. 4. Boundaries make them uncomfortable. The moment you ask for space, time, or privacy, their demeanor changes. Maybe they get passive-aggressive. Maybe they go cold. Maybe they play the victim. Either way, their friendliness fades fast. 5. They're different around different people. You notice they behave differently depending on who's around. Their friendliness is adaptive, not authentic. It's designed to please, not to connect. Why some people become over-friendly. It's tempting to label over-friendly people as manipulative, and sometimes they are. But often, the behavior comes from a place of deep insecurity. Many people who act overly nice have learned, often through childhood or trauma, that love is conditional. That being themselves isn't enough. That the only way to be liked is to be pleasing. So they become hyper-social, over-accommodating, obsessively nice. They're afraid of rejection, afraid of not being liked, afraid of being alone, and the friendliness is their armor. That doesn't excuse the behavior, but it does help explain it. Understanding this doesn't mean you need to tolerate manipulation, but it might give you a way to set boundaries with compassion, rather than just cutting people off. Because not all over-friendly people are toxic. Some are just hurting. What healthy friendliness looks like. So what does healthy friendliness actually look like? It's calm, respectful, warm, but not overwhelming. A healthy, genuinely kind person allows space. They don't rush you. They don't pressure you. They don't need constant validation. They ask questions, but they also listen. They share things, but don't overshare. They respect your boundaries, even if it disappoints them. Their kindness isn't a strategy. It's a reflection of who they are, not a tool to get something. And most importantly, they let relationships unfold naturally. Learning to trust your gut. If you've ever felt weird around someone who was too nice, you're not crazy. Your gut is smarter than you think. We often ignore our instincts because we're taught to be polite. We don't want to offend. We don't want to be rude. We don't want to seem paranoid. But intuition is rarely wrong. When friendliness feels forced, or frantic, or suffocating, there's usually a reason. Something's off. Something doesn't align. And the healthiest thing you can do is pay attention. You don't need to confront them. You don't need to label them. You don't need to justify yourself. But you can step back. You can take space. You can slow things down. Because real connection doesn't need to be fast. It doesn't need to be dramatic. And it definitely doesn't need to feel like pressure. If you found this perspective helpful or thought-provoking, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. It helps more than you know. The bottom line, friendliness is a beautiful thing. In a world that can be cold, cynical, and disconnected, a warm smile or kind word can make all the difference. But not all smiles are genuine. And not all kindness is free. Over-friendliness can be a red flag. Sometimes it's harmless. Sometimes it's not. The key is to stay grounded, stay curious, and trust your sense of what feels real. Because at the end of the day, it's not about being liked, it's about being respected. And true respect doesn't come from charm. It comes from honesty, boundaries, and time.